I'm just here to accompany Norma and to introduce her to you. Norma Brown, we've heard a great deal about her and the fights that she's been involved in for King's Cross. The great hero of King's Cross in history was, of course, Boadicea. Fought a wonderful battle, a great battle against the Romans, and was eventually defeated. Norma, I think we can say, is Boadicea II. Won twice. And when I came to live in Keystone Crescent in the 1980s, and we got involved in this fight with British Rail to check whether they really needed to demolish our neighbourhood, and when we discovered that they didn't, and it wasn't a sensible plan to fight against it, there was one of the people who was standing there, eager to give battle with the rest of us, with Gordon and Phil and the other campaigners. Phil Jeffries, whose name should be mentioned, and Diana, there to represent Phil. The great campaigners. Norma was one of them and one of our leaders. She had won the battle for Balf Street and North Down Street, and this little garden in the parking lot is called Battlebridge Garden, and it's still there, and it's entirely enclosed and sort of secret and safe, and it's one of those small places that survive in a city like London and give it character and heart. Norma has been able to tell us all about her mother, and we have this wonderful DVD. It's DVD, is that right?
It was a video that my son-in-law made
put it onto a DVD.
Onto a DVD.
Yes, yes. And it's, I think, what, an hour of her, Clara, just playing the piano with a flow and a rhythm, competing with the people talking in the pub and getting through, I think. Norma was always known, is known as the Star Baby. It was mentioned. The full reason why she's called the Star Baby isn't revealed in the handout you have. The point is that her mother was playing the piano in the Star and Garter that evening when she was born. And she left in a hurry, and Norma was the result.
The barmaid helped deliver me. And I was the Star Baby right up until I was in my 40s, 50s. Every time I met someone, it was, oh, and how's our little Star Baby? And that was that. But I don't really know. Can I just say two things? I've never been called a guest of honour before, and I've never spoken into a microphone before. So please bear with me, because I'm not really used to talking to people. I'm very good talking with people, but not to them. And can I just say, that's me at 11 years old, I can't believe it.
That's a beautiful photograph in the first pages of the book about King's Cross. Norma, at the age of
11.
Yes,
yeah.
with one of her little neighbours.
Yeah, and my little friend Sue is 67 now, and we're still in contact. But anyway, to talk about my mum is rather difficult, because when you grow up with someone, you kind of take everything for granted. And my mum was quite a character. She wasn't always easy to live with, but she was a brilliant pianist. And when I think of what could have happened today, it just makes you stop and think. But she was 6 months old when she moved into Balf Street, and she was the youngest of a very big family. And for some reason, her brothers, her mother, they could all play the piano. Nobody could read music, none of them ever had a music lesson. And her grandmother, my mum's grandmother, apparently taught Madame Tussaud how to play the piano. She had music rooms. She had rooms in Baker Street, which I understand was a greengrocer's, and she would play the piano and taught various people also to play the piano. So the piano's always been in the family. And lots of my cousins now are very talented and play beautifully. Some of them could have been professional but chose not to, said there wasn't enough money in it, and carried on with ordinary careers. But my mum learnt to play by copying her brothers who could play the piano. And one of her earliest memories was of her two brothers, particularly Jimmy and Bert, who brought the piano home on a barrow, pulled it up Bow Street. How they got it in the basement, I don't know, but that's where it went, and that's where it stayed. Then every time they moved, the piano went with them. My gran was an amazing woman, and the barrow was quite important in her life, because I remember in the 60s when there was a lot to do about the squatters, as Diana will remember, because Phil worked, and my gran was reading the paper and she said to me, I don't know what the fuss is about the squatters, she said. We used to be squatters, I suppose. She said every time we got in arrears with our rent, we'd just load our stuff on the barrow and off we'd go and find somewhere else to live. And she says, the times my husband came home and for lunch and we weren't there, we'd gone. So the barrow seemed to have been very important in their life. Anyway, that's how my mum learnt to play the piano. She learnt from her brothers. Unfortunately, two brothers died in the Battle of Jutland in the First War. But my mum went on to become very, very good. And she was very young, very, very young. I don't quite know how young, but certainly a lot younger than my granddaughter when she was playing for the silent films. And she was playing in a pub, in a theatre called the Cosy Corner, which I think Angela discovered was in Pentonville Road. And she told me quite a lot of horrendous stories about the Cosy Corner because they didn't have public toilets as they do now. So we had lots of stories about that in the interval. But she, as I say, she was very young. And then when she was 16, she was asked to accompany someone who was singing, had an audition to sing in a talent contest. And that turned out to be my dad, who really did have a brilliant voice. And I'm just so sorry that I've no tapes of him because he had such a powerful voice. We are lucky, and she will hate me saying this, but my granddaughter has inherited his voice. Not masculine. She has the most beautiful voice, so thank goodness she's got my dad's voice.
You just like.
She's very modest. But anyway, no, and he came second in this talent contest. And the people that won it, and I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Garter and Daisy. Well, they won the contest, and he came second. And I often wonder what would have happened if he had come first. But that started something big, because at 17 my mum was married to my dad, George, and they really became quite a pair. They were in demand in every pub in the area because it wasn't like now where you have the X Factor and Britain's Got Talent. I mean, they just played and sang where they were wanted, and that was in the pubs. And I think they played in every pub from the Copenhagen Street up to Guildford Street. That was their territory. My dad came from Cromer Street, so it was quite an area. But my mum never got paid. She didn't get paid for playing the piano. They used to send a box round and people would put in what they could afford, because bear in mind it was a very, very working class area and it was quite a poor area. And they would put in what they could afford. And I used to hate that. I hated it because when they came home after the pubs closed, the money would be tipped on the table, and if I was still up I'd get under the table while they counted the money out, because I was a bit of a snob, I suppose, really. I just didn't like the idea of being paid in a box. But that's how she got paid. And then gradually things developed and they started to pay her and she got regular wage. But she just carried on playing. And the other thing too that was, during the war, as Randall said, my mum played in the Star and Garter, which I find very hard to believe because it's now a mosque. And it could not be more different, could it, from a pub to a mosque? But the funny thing was, even when they were doing the building work on the mosque, they uncovered one of the walls and they found this amazing mural behind it. And Mike Bruce, who was the planning officer, got straight on the phone to me and asked me if I knew anything about the Star and Garter. And here I was, the Star Baby. So I said, yeah, of course we do. My mum used to play there. Anyway, this wonderful mural, I don't know if any of you ever go past the Killett Street Health Centre, but the mural is in the health centre. It was completely renovated by Islington Council. Most amazing mural. And when they opened Killett Street Health Centre, my mum went along with Rupert Perry and cut the ribbon because she knew. So, but she was playing in the Star and Garter more or less all through the war. And bear in mind, I was a year old when the war started. So I was quite a toddler all through the war. And you didn't get to sleep very much because you get, especially being near the station, you had sirens going nearly every night. So I was up a lot more than most children. My granddaughter's yawning away. Am I boring you, darling? Anyway, it was open house. Because being near King's Cross, being near the station, you used to get the troops. Soldiers, Air Force, were all changing stations from King's Cross to Euston St Pancras. And the Star and Garter, being quite near the station, was always full of airmen, soldiers. So every Saturday night, more or less, through the war, our house was just an open house. My mum would finish playing, they'd get a couple of crates, come back. 23 Bow Street was full of troops, full of soldiers, sailors, airmen. And she would sit and play the piano for hours, right through the night until the last of them left. So that was a kind of quite an upbringing, really. But I enjoyed every minute, to be honest. I just wish it was still happening. Anyway, it just carried on, and after the war, the Saturday nights there just developed into Saturday nights, Friday nights, God knows what, with family nights. And every week was a party, even with my mum and dad. My mum would play on the piano, someone would say, oh, let's go back to your place, let's go back to your place. So back they'd go, and there would be. But with the family, it was always, everybody had their own song. And most of my family had nice voices or could play the piano and were quite talented. The only thing went wrong a bit with my daughter and I. We were both tone deaf. And yet, I must admit, my Sally loved singing. She would sing her heart out. And she did get mistaken for Judy Garland once.
That's why someone who was deaf.
And she loves singing, but most of my family are quite talented. And some have got lovely voices. But it was always, everybody had their own song. My